All right, we are live. This is Soundbooth Theater Live. And these are the cold reads of Dungeon Crawler Carl, Book 7, This Inevitable Ruin. Thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me while I whip this thing out. Man, I love this book. I just got to the 50% mark in my pre-read. Things are really heating up. I can't wait to get to this stuff, man. You know, I it's times like this that I wish I could just focus all of my energy into narrating. Um, Especially this series. Like this series, I wish I could just push everything in my life out of the way and focus purely on it. Because it just deserves that kind of attention. Um, I think I'm gonna focus on doing that in the next year. Um, Setting my life up to where when book 8 comes out, I literally have everything else out of the way. Like other people are taking care of it. And, I can, like, what I'd like to do is go from the very beginning and just listen to the whole series again. Maybe read it at, as well. And completely refamiliarize myself with everything in order, so that it's all in my mind when I start the pre-read of the next one. Because this is book 7. This is book 7. It's the longest one yet. I don't have a copy of book 6 physically, um, which I think I should get Matt to send me all the hard copy. I actually, I have the two hardcovers, then two new hardcovers, books 1 and 2. Um, I haven't gotten the book 3 hardcover yet. I think I might go to Barnes and Noble today to pick that up. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I just want to re-immerse myself completely. What's really nice is getting to do the audio immersion tunnel versions, and immerse immerse myself in that. I think that's gonna help going forward. But I don't know. Once I feel like I'm, like I said, oh no 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 no. Like I said, I just made it through the halfway point in this book, and it feels like this book really is gonna end up being like a pivotal sort of milestone type of entry where like the stakes have been permanently set, and it's like we're on a one, like on an unstoppable journey from there. You know what I mean? Um, and it's just being able to review, I think, is going to make my performance for book 8 that much better. Um, I think if I'd done that for this book, my performance would be so much better, especially if I'd had time to do more Canadian research. Yeah, because like really, the events leading up to here. Let's see. I mean, let's imagine 2 or 3 weeks per floor. So what we've really experienced is something like, you know, 3 months, 4 months of time between book one and now, in within the book, within the plot, right? 3 or 4 months of time passed, but you know, it's been 4 years since I read book one, or at least the first time I read book one. And, yeah, we did the audio immersion tunnel last year, but there's all that time in between, all the stuff that's happened in the book in between that is just not fresh in my mind. I mean, if it's 3 or 4, if it's 2 or 3 weeks per floor, and correct me if I'm wrong about that, guys, but that's what it seems like, 2 or 3 weeks per floor. then it would be like 3 to 4 months somewhere. When is the new app coming out? We're aiming for January, guys. Thank you, David Kaczynski. But, I can always get better. I can always get better. And, I think this series deserves that. Is there a way to buy the 6 audiobooks without having an app? I don't think so. Cheryl Hutchison, are you on the beta team? Are you testing the beta with? Are you on that short list of people testing the beta? Okay, cool. Yeah. I'm not handling the beta testing stuff. That's all the tech team. I know that there's some users who have volunteered and who have access to the new beta of the app. I Cheryl is saying she loves it. So I do too. I like what we have. The new one much better than what's available now. I don't know, guys. I go to the Discord maybe and start asking. Okay, Cheryl says I haven't had any real feedback lately because it's been solid. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you guys get on Discord and cry like little babies, maybe maybe you'll get access as a beta. We kind of have a public beta going at the moment. So I see. Yes, I did take your advice for Bob and Doug McKenzie because I think that Donut even mentions Rick Moranis. If you weep openly, yeah, you might be able to get on this beta. Hobbsy says, "Hey Jeff, I'm an episode behind. Just listened to your first episode yesterday. Loving it. Already read the Patreon and got your voices in my head all the time. But excited for Book 7 audio. Thank you, Hobbsies. And thank you guys for supporting Matt's Patreon. That's amazing. It's amazing how what his income is from that Patreon. It's because you guys are just such loyal fans, and thank you for all that support. It's crazy. T-shirtist in chief. Just got here. Sorry if I missed this, but is there no way to start on the audio productions before the final edits of the text are done? It's so frustrating. Well, I don't want to go back and do retakes, like, of stuff that wasn't my mistakes. That's the thing is, getting the final edit is the ideal um before I start recording. It's just less, the less complications the better. Erosion asks, so when the new app comes out, will that be the place to buy the audiobooks instead of Audible? Unfortunately, no. Um, we have signed a contract with Audible for the classic audiobooks, the regular audiobooks, to remain exclusive to them for 10 years. That's 10 years. That clock's already started for the first 6 books, but that 10-year clock starts anew with each new installment that comes out. Not with the whole series, but whatever that new book is. So, like book 7, when it hits, it will be 10 years from then that it needs to stay exclusive to Audible. And then, but I don't think that the clock restarts for the first 6 books. Yeah, it sucks that we made that deal, but honestly, considering what ACX is up to, I'm glad. It turned out to be the right move, because now we don't have to go with the ACX deal. We don't have to go with the new royalty structure. for DCC. So that's at least one great thing. Baron says, Jeff, you could easily hold the competition or a raffle, and whoever wins would get a voicemail greeting in Carl's voice. Yeah, we should do more of that stuff. I want to do more of that stuff. Next year, I'm going to be concentrating more on DCC. I'm going to have less audiobooks to narrate. I'm basically just going to say, okay, we got our series that we've already started with me as narrator, and that's it. I can't handle anymore, and I want to promote DCC and focus more on that. So, maybe we'll be doing more stuff like that next year. Sorry, I'm just reading this chat. Yeah, you guys will see more about the new ACX deal once it rolls out, once people actually understand what it is. You'll see it on Facebook. You'll see authors and producers get up in arms publicly when it really comes out. Sendokin says, so no USB version? Sony taught me digital can be taken away when they choose. So I'm not sure what you mean by no USB version. We are going to have the USB version of DCC available very soon. And we're trying to make as many available as possible, but it's just that they're very expensive to manufacture. There's not enough demand for most of the ones that we make. We just do it because it's fun and it's cool. But obviously DCC will print as many of those as we need to in order to sell them. I know, I'm pretty damn sure we didn't print enough this time. We only made 500. But considering how many people are out there just picking up the hardcovers that Ace made, yeah, I think we're going to sell out pretty much immediately. When we release the cassettes of that. We already sold 20 or 30 of them at Author Nation, and that one, that rave event was not particularly well attended. So yeah, ACX is basically ACX is the company that interfaces between independent creators like myself and Audible. It's what allows us to publish. So they're the ones who set the royalty policy. Yes, Time Marked Warlock. You guys, seriously, pick up that book. Pick up that audiobook. Narrated by Annie Ellicott, written by Shammy Stovall. She's already done some good lit RPG as far as if I remember correctly, but Time Marked Warlock is kind of like a noir urban fantasy. It's not. I mean, somebody made the argument that it was lit RPG because it had a save point feature, which is technically true, I guess. But I don't think it really is lit RPG, and I don't think that. But I also think that shouldn't stop anyone from picking it up. It's a great book. Shammy is a really amazing author. We need to keep working with her. I don't think, Time Marked Warlock didn't perform as well as we wanted it to in sales, but we're sticking with her. We're sticking with that series because we know it's good. If it hasn't picked up now, it eventually will. Definitely pick up Time Marked Warlock 1. I play the main character, and Annie does the narration, and Justin Thomas James does all the voices, all the male voices in book 1. But then for book 2, we switched to Ryan H. Reed for all the male voices, all the other male voices, and then Justin just comes back to play one of the characters that recurs. But yeah, I think it's gonna, personally, I think it's one of our best series already. And book 2 is yet to come out. I think it's coming out next week. But it is up for pre-order if you want to pick it up. Okay, Noodle Dragon is checking on my timeline here. Thanks, Noodle. Yes, Bill Underbridge says Warlock is urban fantasy. That said, genre is a marketing tool. I totally agree with him. You know, I like, so I'm always gonna stick with lit RPG. Like even after Dungeon Crawler Carl, no matter what, I will be a lit RPG narrator. This is the genre that got me to the dance. I'm sticking with it. I'm very grateful for the community that's been built around it and all the authors that I've grown my career around. We are a community. We you know, it's kind of a big extended family for me. So I'm always going to be a lit RPG narrator. But that being said, you know, lit RPG isn't the isn't the genre that got me to like fiction. It's just business wise what got me where I am. And you know, for me, genre's not a thing. Like Bill said, it is a marketing tool from my perspective because it just allows me to have a shorthand as to, okay, if you're interested in this, you're probably going to be interested in this. Because a lot of people are like genre specific. A lot of people do just have that particular interest, and that's okay. But I would like it if more lit RPG people would reach out of the genre and try other things. It's interesting to me that lit RPG turned out to be kind of a lot like of probably the majority of people that read or listen to lit RPG. It's the first they've actually recreationally read anything. Um, like other things just never caught their interest for whatever reason, and then lit RPG ended up being the thing that got them in. And that's cool. That's actually quite a commendable thing for a genre to be able to claim. Unfortunately, it's just well, I don't want to say unfortunately. That's not quite the word. Like it just so happens that it's also such a I guess there's so many new authors always sprouting up from the genre, and those new authors are fans. Like they're people that say, "I read this, I enjoy it, I know I can do it too," and then they start it up, and because they enjoy they were customers first, they happen to hit all the tropes. They happen to make the stuff that the new fans love too. But that means that they also don't have an incentive to reach outside the genre. And in fact, there's a disincentive. Like almost every time any lit RPG author tries to go outside the genre, they don't do well. And the disparity between their sales in lit RPG and their sales in other genre is so huge. Like even if they do decently well in another genre, within those other genres have much lower expectations for sales in the first place. So it seems to hurt them so bad they're like, never again, and they stick to it. So I appreciate all the lit RPG fans being loyal and voracious and wanting to pick up as much lit RPG as they can. But I think if you guys would have a little bit more of an open mind and explore the other stuff that your favorite authors do that are not lit RPG, I think you might be surprised what you can get out of it. Sorry, I was yapping a lot and I couldn't keep up with the chat. I'm just gonna I'll stop yapping in a second. Get back to it. Spiffy Hermit asks, "Will you be voicing Princess Donut in whatever show type they do? I couldn't imagine her voice as anyone else." I imagine that that's what they want to. The people from the TV show have contacted me and said they want me involved. Great. I don't know to what extent. They didn't share any details. They didn't get into it at all. So until that time, I have no other information to share. But voicing Donut to me seems like the thing that makes the most sense, right? If I only get to take one character, that would be the one. Last year, around this time, I think it was 2 years ago, you released The Raven as performed by Carl. Will you be doing something again like that this year? Not this year, but probably another time someday. Chumpkillies, I really like your performance in Super Sales on Superheroes. That was the first book to earn me 5 figures its first month of release. And I remember just my jaw hitting the floor when I saw that royalty statement. And then and then he kicked me off the project. Life Reset. I missed that series. What's up, Tristan? Good to see you, man. Any voice actors on your bucket list that you would love to work with? So there's one that got onto my bucket list very recently, and then already this is kind of fulfilled. Because we met and we got along really well. Jonathan McLean. We'll be working together very soon. Oh, that one human Irkin says, if Jeff read a Bioshock book, I would listen to it so much. Dude, I would love to do that. Bioshock is my favorite video game of all time. Other voice actors right now. Mike Patton. That would be amazing. Yes, Jonathan McLean from Die Hard. Oh, thanks for wearing this SBT socks. Really appreciate it. If you guys want a pair of Soundbooth Theater socks, they are they are in our merch store. Where'd it go? Mike Patton, the singer. Yeah, he's also a voice actor. I would like to work with Stephen Pacey. Actually, he's fucking phenomenal. I've been listening to the First Law, or is that what it's called? The Blade itself is what it's called. Carl's voice was based on Patrick Warburton. Okay. Oh, I will tempt you with socks, sir or madam. They're right there. They're right there in that link I just put up. Yeah, looking forward to working with Travis on this book as well. All right. Enough yak, and I have to be out a little bit early today because I have meetings starting at 2:30. I'd love to work with R.C. Bray as well. Oh, I've already worked with Heath Miller. Check out the Dungeon Crawler Carl Audio Immersion Tunnel. He's in the first episode. And we've already talked to him about him playing Florin. Florin and Ripper Wonton. Here we are. All right. We are on Chapter 8. Let's get out of this full screen bullshit. Chapter 8. REF whisked us out of the main courtyard. REF whisked us out of the main courtyard of the college, out the main gates and past the security guards and out into the city. Entering Luracos. We are on Chapter 8. It'll be more like an elopement than a traditional marriage. It'll be more like an elopement than a traditional marriage. It'll be more like an elopement than a traditional marriage. Donut was saying as we walked. My voice sounds so much better today than it did yesterday. I think it's because I woke up super early today. And I had my breakfast more than an hour ago.
I suppose that's okay, but that doesn't mean we can't make it a big what to do. I suppose that's okay, but that doesn't mean we can't make it a big what to do. I do like my what to do's. Mongo can be a ring bearer. I already have a top hat and a bow tie on me. I was going to sing. I already have a top hat and a bow tie on me. I was going to sing. I was going to sing. It is short notice, but I suppose I can be convinced into an impromptu performance. I already have a top hat and a bow tie on me. I was going to sing. It is short notice, but I suppose I can be convinced into an impromptu performance. Do you know the song? Do you know the song?
She paused, then brightened. She paused, then brightened.
Do you know the song Don't Look Back in Anger by Oasis? I can sing that. It'd be perfect as long as there's nobody named Sally there. Also, I promised Carl would wear pants and shoes for the ceremony. Also, I promised Carl would wear pants and shoes for the ceremony. Carl, you do have shoes now in your inventory, don't you? Carl, you do have shoes in your inventory now, do you? Carl, you do have shoes now in your inventory. Carl, you do have shoes now in your... Carl, you do have shoes now in your inventory, don't you? Carl, you do have shoes now in your inventory, don't you?
Ugh.
Do you know the song Don't Look Back in Anger by Oasis? I can sing that. It'd be perfect, as long as there's nobody named Sally there. Also, I promised Carl would wear pants and shoes for the ceremony. Carl, you do have shoes now in your... Carl, you do have shoes now in your inventory, don't you?
Donut paused as I sent her a message. Carl, I need you to put your sunglasses on and keep them on. Do you remember on the 5th floor how you could keep track of who was a changeling based on their body temperature? Keep an eye out, just in case. I know they're supposed to be on our team, but we want to be sure. Donut didn't say anything, but the sunglasses flashed onto her face as she resumed trying to convince Louis to let her sing at the wedding. We exited the front, raised entrance of the college and stepped out onto a cobblestone street. The street was just wide enough for a single cart. Across the street stood a simple metal railing. I took a step toward it and peered over the edge, looking down into the funnel city. Sorry, guys, I forgot. Samantha Marielli says, Jeff, what do you want? What do you want from me? What does that even mean? I will be doing the whole book in Discord if I can help it. There might be times when I'm like, I can't stream. I need to focus and get this thing done. I looked down in awe. This is it, I thought. This is the city. Lurakos, city of dreams. City of dreams. I took in a breath. Despite having been prepared for this sight, I still had to take a moment. Each level was a wide ring, with a yawning, open hole in the center, leading down into the pit. The circumference of the jagged gap got smaller and smaller as it went down, until it disappeared into a wall of smoke. A single waterfall fell from across the way, vanishing into the clouds. The fall would hit a lower level, where it would be channeled back over the edge, like it was going downstairs. The vast majority of the buildings were in a stone, Gothic style, overwrought with columns and arches and gargoyles. Much of the architecture was of tall buildings with vertical lines culminating in vine-covered arches and gables with curved rafters. Much of the architecture was of tall buildings with vertical lines culminating in vine-covered arches and gables with curved rafters. Everything gave the sense of time, of spirit. This did not feel like a set of blocks designed for the singular purpose to be knocked over. No, this was a real, living, breathing place, and the sight of it staggered me. But what struck me most was how clean everything looked, yet lived in at the same time. Ancient, but cozy. This part of the city clearly hadn't been flooded. Havana had felt like that too, but that feeling had been much more eerie because all the people living there were ghosts. They were already dead. The city was already destroyed. The toll was real. A small draconian boy rushed past, carrying what looked like a bundle of twine. This is real too, I thought. It's just as real as Havana. That thought was not a welcome one, especially in context of what we'd already done to this place, to these people. Aryef pointed down the street toward what looked like an off-ramp on the freeway. It was a ramp that led downward, curving toward the next level down. We moved to the ramp and kept walking. I was struck by how many people weren't on the streets. Down lower, there seemed to be quite a few. The college itself was teeming with activity, as were the suburbs hidden behind it. But the public areas here seemed bare. The vast majority of dots were other crawlers. A group of men I didn't recognize came up just as their names popped into my book of voodoo. Donut paused her wedding planning to make them all Sergeant First Class, giving them the ability to recruit others. Already, my interface was beeping with others getting recruited. The numbers were slowly rising. We had just under 3 days to get them all. I've pre-read 50%. I'm gonna kill this. No more coffee. Only water left. I'm gonna check something real quick. All right. just so you guys know, it looks like each day of narration is like this much of the book. That's not too bad, actually. I was thinking I was going slower than that, so. I returned my attention to the city. I could barely see the walls of the funnel itself, though if I looked up... That's not okay. I could barely see the walls of the funnel itself, though if I looked up, I could see the top lip of the crevice, maybe 300 to 400 feet up, peeking through a pair of buildings at the very top. These walls were not the walls of the volcano. Those were much further out, probably inaccessible and out of bounds. This funnel was nothing more than a hole in the ground. I wondered on that. The Overcity had a wooden floor that had seemed downright rickety in some places. The hunting grounds were jungle and had a solid physical ground. Hell, there was a deep river running through it. Supposedly, if one spent too much time digging up there, one would break through and fall into this area. It was all fake, all game setup. But still, it was important to know how all this worked. This area was the same. According to the story, it was just once a flat... According to the story, it was once just a flat, verdant land with forests on the outskirts and rocky ground, filled with caves and rich minerals. When the dwarves decided to tunnel down to the gods, they burrowed through solid rock, only stopping when they reached the roots of the all-tree. The dwarf was talking to me, but I'd missed some of it.
We say there are 66 levels. But that's not true. Not all rings completely circle the city.
Let me hear him one more time.
We say there are 66 levels. But that's not true. Not all rings completely circle the city.
RF was saying. We turned toward a long, winding road that led toward another off-ramp.
We number from the bottom up. This is level 49, and it's mostly homes. The one we just left was 50, and it's known for the college, which takes up a third of the ring. The rest of 50 is the high cultural district and museums. There are 3 rings that are called cultural districts, and this one is the uppermost.
Yeah, I'm working from a digital copy. Little blue highlight. Oh, like this? That's just me choosing things. Selecting things. He gave me a sidelong glance.
It's more for the fancy folks, if you know what I mean. It's more for the fancy folks, if you know what I mean. I went to play up there once, and I didn't understand a damn word that anybody was saying. The biggest theater is down below in Ring 9, called the Piccadilly, but it's still a little wet. My uncle drained it, and it was filled with jellyfish. They're still cleaning it out.
How high did the water get?
Level 39. It drained down to 29 pretty fast, but then it got stopped up. We were going to fix it, but then Juicebox started opening everybody's eyes and had us keep... We were going to fix it, but then Juicebox started opening everybody's eyes and had us keep it clogged. We had water up to 15 for a bit, and now it's only up to level 3. Just enough to cover the highest tower of the castle. Anybody who wants to take that castle has got to learn how to swim.
Sorry, I'm just, Okay, just making sure I'm getting it consistent. We moved to the ramp, but I paused. We moved to the ramp, but I paused, seeing the traps glowing ominously at the corners. REF followed my gaze.
Explosives, in case they get in. Explosives, in case they get in. We have them on every other down ramp. We have them on every other down ramp. We have them on every other down ramp.
I nodded and continued, still gawking at everything. More crawlers came up. I recognized this one. His name was Ajib, and he was level 51. I'd only met him once, briefly, at the beginning of the 6th floor. He was missing a leg when I first met him, but now he had what looked like a mechanical prosthetic. Donut got him and his companions recruited. Why don't they just jump down the center? I asked, more to myself as we moved down to the next level. This one, 45, was filled with shops, but like Louis said earlier, they appeared to mostly be for clothing, and they were all closed.
They've done it a few times, REF said. There was another season when the orcs marched down the street. There was another season when the orcs marched down the streets while the reavers jumped in, using invisibility and fall potions, getting to the castle first. There was another season when the orcs marched down the streets while the reavers jumped in, using invisibility and fall potions, getting to the castle first. They still lost that season. That's not going to work this time. Not with the city defense system.
I stopped dead in the street and looked at the dwarf. Another season? I asked. He nodded.
I don't remember this, but there are some with the memory quickened. I don't remember this, but there are some with the memory quickened. I believe I am new, as are most of us, but some have persisted. My uncle remembers dozens of seasons now. Not as many as Juicebox, but he's one of the Not as many as Juicebox, but he's one of the Jatismara, and he sits upon her war council. Not as many as Juicebox, but he's one of the Jatismara, and he sits upon her war council. Not as many as Juicebox, but he's one of the Jatismara, and he sits upon her war council.
There was so much packed into that short statement that I didn't know where to start. I thought of Harriet, the cookbook author of the 16th edition, who'd made waking NPCs up his life's work. I thought of his final, heart-wrenching entry in the cookbook, and I wondered if he'd managed to survive. And if he had, was he watching this right now? Probably not. If he was alive, he'd likely still be working in the dungeon somewhere. He'd wanted to be a game guide. I didn't know if he'd made it. It had been, 2
About a month since Juicebox had made it down to this floor.
He threatened me with Welsh? Fuck that. Fuck you, Matt. Don't you dare.
How many of you guys know?
About the previous seasons? About our past lives?
He shrugged. His strange breastplate swung back and forth like a bell.
Most of us know. Some don't seem to understand, but most know. Juicebox says there are different kinds of us, made with different purposes. Some shopkeepers are different, and some of the patrons of certain establishments are also different, unable to understand. The hands of the Outworlders are everywhere when you know what to look for. Some shopkeepers are different, and some of the patrons of certain establishments are also different, unable to understand. The hands of the Outworlders are everywhere when you know what to look for.
I forgot. My damn light is making so much noise.
I exchanged a look with the others, who'd stopped talking about Louie's wedding. Brittany was next to me, and she asked,
Does your uncle remember dying? Does your uncle remember dying?
No.
Does your uncle remember dying? No,
RAF said.
we believe that for most of us. No. We believe that for most of us, if one dies, they are dead forever. We are not immortal like the Outworlders. The Outworlders aren't immortal anymore. The Outworlders aren't immortal anymore. Aren't immortal anymore. The Outworlders aren't immortal anymore.
Brittany said.
That is what Juicebox has told us,
RAF said. He suddenly and abruptly pulled the curved blade from his back, which popped out with a loud shing. All of us jumped away, including Mongo. When Mongo jumped, Rend tumbled off his back and bounced on the floor, making an like noise.
When the fighting starts,
RAF said.
I will have my revenge against Architect Houston.
He swung his sword back and forth a few times.
Architect Houston?
Donut asked. She nudged Rend forward with her head, rolling him onto Mongo's tail. Mongo lifted the tail up, and Rend bowled onto Mongo's back, giggling.
Who is that? The leader of the madness,
the dwarf said.
A Viceroy Outworlder. He caught my brother as he attempted to sabotage their fortifications.
He resheathed his blade over his shoulder.
They say my brother was tortured before Juicebox infiltrated and ended his suffering. Is that the guy Juicebox decapitated during the pre-production meeting?
Donut asked. She made a scoffing noise.
I don't like those Viceroy guys. I'm glad they wear masks. I'm glad they wear masks. If I had a face like that, I'd wear a mask too. I don't like those Viceroy guys. I'm glad they wear masks. If I had a face like that, I'd wear a mask too. I don't like those Viceroy guys. I'm glad they wear masks. If I had a face like that, I'd wear a mask too. That was one of his surgeons. That was one of his surgeons,
the dwarf said.
Nobody has managed to get into Houston's operating theater. That's what they call his lair next to the throne room.
We walked for a little while in silence, ever going lower. As we reached level 35, the buildings started to get rougher in architecture. The scent of the ocean lingered. This area had been flooded, but only briefly. These streets were mostly empty. There were more shops here, but none were occupied. I caught sight of a trap guild. On my map, it said it was actually open. The guild, at least. The attached shop was not. How much did you guys manage to sabotage? Of the enemy encampments, I mean. How much did you guys manage to sabotage? Of the enemy encampments, I mean. How much did you guys manage to sabotage? Of the enemy encampments, I mean.
We will discuss it when we get below. But we bloodied all of them a little. We will discuss it when we get below. We will discuss it when we get below. But we bloodied all of them a little. We managed to get inside the inner circle at least once for all of them, except the Naga, of course. We managed to get inside the inner circle at least once for all of them, except the Naga, of course. Or, like I said, into the Madness's operating theater.
I felt my heart quicken. The Nagas? Why couldn't you get in there?
The Nagas are not very good at mass warfare, and they say they never win this game. It is said theirs is a court of assassins, not warriors. If they are to win, it is with a poisoned blade in the dark, not with the marching of 1,000 feet.
He shuddered.
Not that they have feet, the slippery demons. Their poisons can kill you in a million ways. Their acids can melt you in seconds. No changeling or spy has ever been able to infiltrate their inner sanctum. No one has ever seen the whore who hides behind our veil. No one has ever seen the whore who hides behind her veils and guard. Even Juicebox wouldn't attempt to sneak in. We just attacked their fortifications in quick raids.
I nodded. I knew some of this. More than REF did. I'd known it for a while. About how difficult it would be to eliminate... I'd known it for a while, about how difficult it would be to eliminate the Naga leadership. He only knew half of it, and despite being an awakened NPC, he still only knew about the in-game version of the Blood Sultanate. Drachia had extensive notes about the Naga people, whom he hated, but Mordecai had also spent some time telling us what he knew about them and their government. In the galaxy, their people were supposedly as wide and as varied as humans. They'd been humiliated and bankrupted during Drakia's run in the game, but that didn't make them stupid. Mordecai made a point to drive this home. From what he explained, their government was like a mix between the Mantis regime and that of the United Kingdom, a constitutional monarchy. There were individual systems, all under a central government. They had a constitution and parliament and a prime minister who ran the day-to-day operations, all under a mostly-for-show sovereign whose name out in the wide universe was now king. But long, long ago, they'd been known as the Sultanate. Their people were considered mostly humble and wanting to keep to themselves, but several of their systems were now a tourist destination and vacation spot, especially the home planet. They'd once been known as explorers and shipbuilders, and conquerors. The grand in-orbit shipyards still existed, but the factories were now mostly owned by other entities, and the Nagas themselves were a source of cheap labor. Here in Faction Wars, they were basically LARPing the olden days. Drakia thought it was mostly for fun, but after reading between the lines and talking to Mordecai, I was starting to realize their continued participation in Faction Wars was actually a PR stunt, a way to keep people interested in Naga history, which would drive tourism. They called themselves the Blood Sultanate, a name hearkening to a darker, bloodier time in their history. The actual participants were of the royal family. During Drakia's time, their leader was a Naga who was now the king. He no longer participated in the games, leaving it to his children and cousins. The current leader of the in-game Blood Sultanate was the real-life crown princess, whose name in the game was the Sultana. I didn't know what her real name was. In the old days, her identity would be kept a secret. It was considered punishable by death for someone to even see her. She sat behind veils and was guarded by an honor guard, who were all sentenced to deferred death for looking upon her. She sat behind veils and was guarded by an honor guard, who were all sentenced to deferred death for looking upon her. In the old days, the Sultana was the eldest half-sister of the Sultan, and she would be the mother of the future generation of the royal family. She would be bred until she either gave birth to 99 sons or 198 daughters. She would be bred until she either gave birth to 99 sons or 198 daughters, whichever happened first. If she gave birth to 99 sons, she would be killed. After that, the 99 sons would start their process of competing to be the next sultan. The winner of that battle was neutered, and the other 98 brothers would basically take turns knocking up the oldest sister until she, in turn, had 99 more sons. Drakia's notes on all this was confusing, and I wasn't 100% certain how it worked. Apparently, the gender of the Nagas couldn't be determined for a while, which muddled everything even further. If the Sultana managed to have 198 daughters before she had 99 sons, it wasn't clear what would happen, though I gathered she basically became the leader and all her male siblings would be put to the blade. It had only happened once in their history, and the Sultana who did it was deemed the sepsis whore, who'd supposedly poisoned almost all of her sons. The Nagas were now more civilized, and the family worked more like that of a traditional monarchy. The current crown princess was the daughter of the actual king, and she was the highest-ranking family member actually here on Earth. In the game, she was play-acting as the sepsis whore, and from what I gathered, she took the gig very, very seriously. But she was also a ghost, untouchable. Despite the Naga team getting their asses kicked every single time, she'd never been killed in the game. Not once. They'd have their throne room taken, usually at great expense to the actual poor NPCs and mercenaries who got sent into the room, but the Sultana and her guard would be gone, only to reappear at the end, safe and laughing. The problem was, these Nagas weren't NPCs who believed in the story built around them. They knew who I was, and they would know how important it would be to me to get them out of the game. and now that the protections were off, I had no idea if they would keep the whole Sultana charade up. I did know this princess had spent some time in the Naga military, and she had both real-life and in-game experience with fighting. So this wasn't someone to underestimate. We walked for several more minutes, passing by more crawlers and recruiting them to the army. I briefly met a crawler named Jurgen, a large human with a shock of blonde hair and arms that looked as if they could bend steel. He was a level 65 Harry. He was a level 65 Hari. He was a level 65 Hari, which was some sort of barbarian class. The man also worshipped a god named Donar. He pulled me into a tight hug and kissed me on the cheek when we met.
You saved my life, and you saved the life of my Heidi with that black magic you did at the end of the last floor. For that, you get a kiss!
We moved on. We moved on. By the time we reached the 9th floor, it was clear this was the area where we were before. This area had been flooded until very recently. The ground remained wet and slimy, and the X's of dead sharks littered the map. The floor contained the massive Piccadilly Theater, surrounded by bars, including a few true safe rooms. The large theater building sat right underneath the wall. The large theater building sat right underneath the waterfall, and the sculpture-covered roof doubled as the step for the water from above to land. The large theater building sat right underneath the waterfall, and the sculpture-covered roof doubled as the step for the water from above to land and cascade off the edge.
Try that one more time.
The large theater building sat right underneath the waterfall, and the sculpture-covered roof doubled as the step for the water from above to land and cascade off the edge.
There we go.
One of the statues was that of a giant frog, and it swallowed the entirety of the water before another frog next to it spewed the water out of the edge down below. There was something stuck in this statue's mouth, and the water was spraying unevenly. As I watched, a group of NPCs were trying to dislodge whatever was stuck in there. The theater building itself had been ruined by the recent flooding, but even more NPCs. Humans, elves, and draconians swarmed over the building, cleaning it up. Humans, elves, and draconians swarmed over the building, cleaning it up. It was the most active group of NPCs we'd seen since we got here. A Bactrian camel, the first camel I'd seen on this floor, walked on stilts and was putting letters up on the water-stained marquee. It read, "One night only. Session of love. Session of love. The final show before we all die." In smaller letters under that, it read, "Balcony still closed due to jellyfish infestation."
She'll meet us at the entrance to the Desperado Club,
REF said as we... Nope.
She'll meet us at the entrance to the Desperado Club,
REF said as we descended past the 7th floor. REF said as we descended past the 7th floor. These were all closed and destroyed shops, weapons and magic shops, mercenary markets, all still flooded out and ruined. The only thing open were the guilds and the occasional safe room bar. Excuse me. Is the Desperado Club Is the Desperado back? Is the Desperado back open? I asked, surprised. I asked, surprised.
It just opened back up earlier today,
REF said.
Our, other leader has already parked himself inside. Juicebox will meet us in the entrance bar. She secured a private room for us.
The lower we got, the more active it was. A group of dwarves jogged by, singing a military-style running cadence. They carried hammers and sickles over their shoulders as they ran. Most of these soldiers were only levels 25 to 40. They were trying, but they were not in very good sync. I felt my lips tighten as I watched them. Most of these soldiers were only levels 25 to 40. They were trying, but they were not in very good sync. What?
How did I just did that twice.
The Desperado Club stuck out amongst all the other buildings on the 4th floor. The level was relatively small compared to the others above it, and the hole in the center was filled with water as the levels below it remained flooded. The square concrete building stood on a group of pillars.
Okay, 112 days from the start of book 1 until the end. Yeah, so almost 4 months. So I was pretty close.
The square concrete building stood on a group of pillars. The square concrete building stood on a group of pillars, looking like someone had taken a modernist building built in the 1960s and dropped it right into the middle of Renaissance France. A Las Vegas-style neon sign stood above the large building, but only the red bottom half of the arrow was lit. The sign did not look anything like the Art Deco style from the previous floors. A hand-painted sign hung from a sheet draped across the entrance. It read, "Grand Reopening. Under new management." We put Mongo and Rend away, and we all went inside. Entering Desperado Club entrance bar. The Headlamp Colonnade. We didn't push past the entrance bar like we usually did, but we remained in the first room. It was empty except for a Knoll bartender who eyed us warily as REF pulled us past and into the back kitchen. He pressed against a panel in the wall, and it opened, revealing a long tunnel.
Damn it.
He pressed against a panel in the wall, and it opened, revealing a long tunnel. donut.
Carl, the bartender is a changeling! You were right!
Carl. Okay, keep cool. I exchanged a nervous look with the others, and we went into the hall. We traversed the long corridor, went through another door, and we entered a room with a dark figure sitting at the table. The figure looked up from his work, which appeared to be covered with paper and notes. It was a gnoll, an old, wizened male NPC with only one eye. The name over him read,
Hunger Hammy, Level 30, Gnoll, Manager of the Headlamp Colonnade.
Before anybody could say anything, the gnoll jumped on the table, scattering papers. He let out an excited screech and started waving his arms back and forth. He leapt at Louis, who backed up against the wall. The old dog man pressed himself against the poor, sputtering crawler and started furiously kissing him on the lips.
There we are. That is a chapter. Let me try that again, actually.
The old dog man pressed himself against the poor, sputtering crawler and started furiously kissing him on the lips.
There we go. Loose box time. Jared Cannon asks, that's an interesting interesting question. So CV12, that's the Avon tone. This right here, what I'm using now, is a C12. It's a Telefunken C12. What is the original brand? AKG. So it is a copy of the AKG C12, but it's Telefunken. But the CV12 is the Avon tone, which is what I used to use, and yeah, I had swapped that tube. How the fuck did you know that? I mean, what made you think it was tube swapped in the first place? I did swap the tube on my CV12, my Avantone CV12. That was a long time ago, and I honestly could not tell the difference. This tube here is the one that came with it. It better be for the price. Yeah, that was the idea, Jared. Back then. I don't know that it worked. I did the painstaking work of swapping it, which made me very nervous at the time. And yeah, I really wasn't able to tell.
Chapter 9. Juicebox changed to her familiar human form as she sat on Louis's lap, her arm draped over his shoulder. She was smiling broadly, but I could see the exhaustion and worry in her eyes. She had scars she didn't have before. Her left ear, I also noticed, didn't form when she changed, though after about 10 seconds, an ear did finally appear, almost like an afterthought. A Fuchs 87. So it's a U80. It's a U80. That's a Neumann clone. Holy shit. Cool. If there's any other audio files out there, here's what he's talking about. I mean, I can't really speak to any technical aspects of the C12 because I'm just a user. You know, I don't do enough of the research to be an actual expert on how things function and why I like what I like. It's all the ear. A long time ago, I visited a Telefunken booth at a audio convention, and they had this whole series of microphones, like a circular table of all the most, state-of-the-art stuff. And I tried all of them, but this one, broke my brain when I listened to it. I just thought that it just made my voice sound the best that I've ever heard it. So I was like, okay, that's a crazy price tag, but I'm picking it up. It wasn't at the time. Like when I went to that convention, and I tried it out, then I looked at the price tag. I was like, oh, hell no. But then like a year or two later, I was like, okay, I have the funds. I'm picking this thing up. We lose things and we gain them. We lose things and we gain them. I examined her.
Juicebox. Human. Level 35. Co-warlord of Team Retribution. This is an ally.
Yeah, I don't think anyone. I don't think any narrators. I don't think any narrators use the Telefunken C12. I'm, kind of notorious for over-engineering everything. But I mean, considering what narrators standard pay, right? Like the standard of the narration business, it's probably just not cost effective enough for most people, which, I don't blame. It's not like I blame them. The CV12, the Avantone CV12 was amazing. So, if I had never changed from there, I would still be sounding good. This just sounds 1%, maybe 2% better, but that's enough for me to make the swap.
But the C12 is more often used in like music studio settings with singers, with instruments. Yeah, considering Audible's compression for sure. But you know, that's another reason why we have our platform. By the way, guys, just another marketing push. Go to soundbooththeater.com, check out our platform. We distribute at 192 kilobytes per second as our highest quality, whereas Audible is 124, I believe. And I think right at about 192 is when it's really hard to hear the loss from compression. Thanks, DevTron. I appreciate it. That's coming not too long from now. Did you sign up for the beta, by the way, DevTron? See if you can, if you get on Discord and bother some of our people, you can probably get in there. Yeah, Samantha. I actually thought that would have been a Katya quote. But
I knew that level was incorrect. The last time I'd seen her, I knew that level was incorrect. The last time I'd seen her, it had said she was 17. I also knew the number changed when she changed. Mordecai said there was no way to tell what her real level was, even when she was in her blank form. Mordecai had said. Mordecai said there was no way to tell what her real level was, even when she was in her blank form. Mordecai said there was no way to tell what her real level was, even when she was in her blank form. It was a quirk of high-level changeling NPCs. Louis appeared terrified as he sat in the only chair in the room upon her insistence. Donut had freed Mongo back out into the office, and I let Rend free as well. Donut had freed Mongo back out into the office, and I let Rend free as well. The first thing Juicebox did after she peeled herself off Louis was to pick up the little pet and pat him on the head. Mongo also snuffled up against Juicebox, and she laughed as she scratched him. REF remained in the room, guarding the door.
I don't gotta read. No, I'm not redoing the quote. He's remembering the quote himself. He's thinking of it to himself. Is this available in WAV format? No. Actually, the audiobook itself, the classic audiobook that's exclusive to Audible, that's never, at least for another 10 years, not going to be available in WAV. But, you know, we have been considering making things available in WAV on our platform. It wouldn't be WAV, it'd probably be FLAC. Because FLAC is lossless, but it's also compressed a little bit compared to WAV. And that's actually going to make a real difference when it comes to audiobooks because of just how big the files are in the first place. Well, thanks, Hootie42. I really appreciate that. Someday, maybe. We have foregone that opportunity for the next 10 years. But, you know, if you want to pick up the Audio Immersion Tunnel, that'll be just as good. Well, thank you, Hootie. That'll be the way to go going forward. We're releasing seasons 2 and 3 next year, so watch out for that.
Brittany and I stood over the desk, looking at the papers Juicebox had splayed out for us. Ren stood on the desk as well, gnawing on the end of a pen. I shuffled through the documents. It was a lot. But it wasn't all the papers, I noted. She'd made a point of taking some and sticking them in the drawer so we couldn't see what they said. It was a subtle but purposeful move. "We are your allies," she was saying, "but we are our own people, too." "We are your allies," she was saying, "but we are our own people, too."
Coop JNS says Matt needs to add Shrek and Jegbarth to the books. The inside the NBA bits from the Immersion Tunnel are amazing. I agree. I think you guys should bother him about it. Nope, I completely re-record everything from scratch for the Audio Immersion Tunnel. Oh, I would love to go to Dragonsteel, but I'm not. They're full up. Okay, I need a reminder as to what Juicebox sounds like. So, let's see here. Butcher's Masquerade, listen now. Wait. I thought she had a beer. I guess that's book 4. Gate of the Feral Gods. Okay, near the end of chapter 10.
able to recruit a few NPCs to our cause because their world was obviously a construct, and the illusion was easily shattered.
The hunting grounds are our ancient home,
Juicebox said. The normally ditzy and goofy NPC was suddenly dead serious.
We've been stuck here for a long time. There was a way to go home, but it is lost to us now that the town hall is gone.
All right, got it.
Carl,
Juicebox said.
you didn't do what I wanted. We wanted everybody to be protected, to have regeneration. That's not what happened.
I looked up from the papers. I remembered what Juan Sheen Jinx had told me, that they'd never let us be safe. They would never allow it. So we did the next best thing. We made it so we can kill them instead. She nodded thoughtfully.
It'll have to do.
She rested her head. She rested her head on Louis's shoulder. Rend had chewed the pen in half. And now ink ran down his face. I picked him up before he could do more damage and put him on the floor. He giggled and started rolling in circles. I returned my attention to the documents. Most of the papers were maps and castle locations along with troop strengths. There were resupply schedules, including information on the food market that had mysteriously appeared in Shantytown overnight. It turned out the existence of the Shantytown, a ring of hastily built buildings and markets surrounding the entrance to Laracos, was a new thing. At least one this large. There was usually a Shantytown, but it was never anything like this. It had appeared soon after the flooding, ostensibly built by the displaced NPCs. Nobody had actually built it. The hovels just sprung up out of nowhere. Since the slums completely encircled the top entrance to Laracos, they formed the equivalent of a new, large-sized settlement. The rules had been pretty clear that they weren't going to add new NPCs once we'd flooded the town, but it appeared they'd either changed the rules or found some sort of loophole, as there were some new shops with new NPCs. None were weapons or mercenary markets or entrances to the Desperado Club, but there were food markets and multiple temples, all placed in ramshackle wooden and metal buildings. There was a single Club Vanquisher entrance hidden somewhere in Shantytown, but getting access was tough, and the overpriced markets... There was a single Club Vanquisher entrance hidden somewhere in Shantytown, but getting access was tough, and the overpriced markets there were only good for outfitting individuals, There was a single Club Vanquisher entrance hidden somewhere in Shantytown, but getting access was tough, and the overpriced markets there were only good for outfitting individuals and not armies. Even though some version of Shantytown existed every season, I saw no indication it was ever anything like this. I suspected the size and addition of new markets was a result of someone's emergency action item, but I didn't know who. The teams all got three of the emergency requests, and I knew all the teams were out. We still had 2 left. Actually, I wondered if the NPC team was given access to all this stuff. Part of that action item that gave them their team included full voting rights. Did Juicebox have the Warlord menu? I had so many questions about how the NPC team functioned. I would have to investigate further. Either way, there was now a smattering of new shops in this new area, which was outside of Laracos. That meant this so-called Shantytown would still be accessible to the other teams, even when the ceasefire ended. What I was looking at right now was Juicebox's scrapped plans on destroying the food markets once the fighting started. Once the ceasefire had been called, reps for all the teams had moved in and purchased all the food they could. Before, they hadn't trusted the food market as Juicebox's people had been poisoning all the stock. The ceasefire had refreshed all the food stores. They'd taken advantage of the reprieve and had moved in. So now there was no point to it.
Yeah, water. Need water.
Who's the mayor of Shantytown? The look on Juicebox's face soured.
There have been several since it opened, as the Outworlders kept killing them, though they weren't allowed to own the town. Not until the games began.
She shook her head.
It's so stupid. The second most recent mayor was a gnoll named Theora. Just before the ceasefire was called, Theora got called out in single combat and lost. The opponent cheated, of course. Basically stabbed Theora in the back. Now the mayor is...
She took a pained breath.
someone else.
But it's not one of the invaders?
I wish. We can kill the invaders once the fighting begins.
Juicebox said.
We can kill the invaders once the fighting begins. We can't touch this guy.
So, Ferdinand? Juicebox pointed a pair of finger guns at me.
Bingo, cowboy.
I shot a nervous glance at Donut to gauge her reaction, but I realized she hadn't reacted at all. Her eyes were flashing as she was deep in chat. I was starting to suspect she already knew all of this. Are any of the Outworlders coming into the regular city? Into Larakos? I asked. Brittany slid a map over for me to examine. It was a map of the Naga team's fortifications. It only showed the outside of the building.
They are starting to, yes,
Juicebox said.
There's not much here for them, but still they come. Mostly to scout. These last few weeks before the rule change, they didn't dare. Anyone who entered regretted it immediately.
I figured, I said, as I started to mentally trace the map in my scratch pad.
Is Ruby okay?
Juicebox suddenly asked.
They told me she stayed behind, but you promised to keep her safe.
Ruby was one of the changeling children with compression sickness. We have her. And the others. Mordecai has been keeping them safe. She nodded.
Good. I haven't had enough contact with the others. The rules of this world... It's a lot. I don't know how you do it. I attempted a clandestine meeting and a voice... I attempted a clandestine meeting. I attempted a clandestine meeting. I attempted a clandestine meeting, and a voice spoke out of nowhere, telling me I wouldn't be allowed to talk to that person. And each time the blob guys killed the mayor, there was an announcement saying the mayor had died. Most people don't see the words, but I do. I've never seen anything like that before.
I was going to ask you about that. Do you have, menus and things like that? Or access to the Warlord chat? Or to the Faction Wars manager?
I know of what you speak. I know of which you speak, but I do not have access. I do have the mental voice messaging system, and I do have the mental words that speak to me in my mind and float before me when there is a change.
She sighed. Then she reached over and booped Louis on the nose with her finger.
But the good thing is, that means we can now talk when you like.
Louis still hadn't said a word since he'd gotten in here. What she'd said registered, and I finally understood the dynamic between Juicebox and Gravy Boat. I grunted. So that's why you haven't murdered him yet.
What? What?
Donut asked, looking up.
Why hasn't she murdered who? Why hasn't she murdered who? Your fiancé.
Juicebox said to Donut.
Warlord on high, Sir Ferdinand. That's what he's changed his name to. Warlord on high, Sir Ferdinand. That's what he's changed his name to. He's in the club right now, sitting at the bar, talking with that infected elf outworlder we're not allowed to kill. This cat has done nothing but cause problems, and now he has been given control of my people. He is the one given power over the controlling system, including the city defense system. That elf says it was a workaround to allow us to participate because the cat isn't really an NPC, but of the same stock as you. If he dies, we lose control, so he must be kept safe. My fiancé? Ferdinand is telling people he's my fiancé? I think not. Where does he get the nerve to even say that? My fiancé? Ferdinand is telling people he's my fiancé? I think not. Where does he get the nerve to even say that?
Her eyes started flashing again, confirming my suspicion that she was already talking to him. She let out another angry scoff as she furiously messaged back and forth. She let out another angry scoff. She let out another angry scoff as she furiously messaged back and forth. She let out another angry scoff as she furiously messaged back and forth. Juicebox appeared strangely relieved at this. What do you mean by infected elf outworlder? Is his name Drick?
Yes. Yes.
Donut confirmed without looking up, her voice still angry.
It's him. It's him. Yes. It's him.
Juicebox nodded.
Yes, Drick. He is called our adjutant. I touched his arm, and he was solid as you or me, but when I attempted to decapitate him, my blade went right through like he was a ghost. He's like the others right after they've been He is like the others right after they've been regenerated. We are in a... He is like the others right after they've been
Starting over.
Yes, Drick. He is called our adjutant. I touched his arm, and he was solid as you or me, but when I attempted to decapitate him, my blade went right through like he was a ghost. He is like the others right after they've been regenerated. We are unable to hurt them at all for some time, but that protection appears permanent for him. He is not really an elf. He has a worm in his brain, similar to the one you rock... He has a worm in his brain, similar to the one you... He has a worm in his brain, similar to the one your rock friend had. But this one is a different species.
That's called a Valte worm. I met him once when I got pulled out of the game, and Donut and I met him again recently when we were picking our own adjutant. Look, we have a lot to do, and I'm glad we're in each other's chat now. We have a lot to prepare for, but I first need to know how you guys are planning on defending yourself. What's the city defense system? And I need to talk to the other warlord to make sure we're on the same page. She nodded. She slid off Louis's lap and started to change form. She went back to the grizzled, elderly gnoll. Instead of a missing ear, this one had a missing eye. Donut.
Louis, tell her she's pretty. You haven't said one word to her, and I think she's starting to get nervous you don't like her anymore. You're about to get married.
Juicebox, now standing, put a pair of fuzzy arms back around Louis's shoulder. He remained awkwardly sitting in the chair, his eyes wide as saucers. He wasn't moving at all, like he was terrified, giving the impression he was standing upon a landmine. He, too, I realized, was in chat, eyes flashing. Carl. Louis? You okay? Louis. Dude, she's messaging me nonstop, talking about how we have to get married to make sure our houses are bonded. It's all Game of Thrones shit, and it's freaking me out. Carl. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. It's completely unnecessary. She'll understand.
Damn it.
Louis. I already told her I would. It's okay, I think. She's different in the messages than she is out loud. She's pretending to be all confident, but she's not. Man, I think she's really, really scared. She's in over her head, I think. Carl. We're all in over our heads. You don't have to actually marry her. Louis. She thinks it's important. We need them on our side, and if this helps, I'll do it. If they turn against us, we're screwed. This will help. We need each other. Donut.
Plus, you love her, right?
Louis. Yeah, sure. Of course. Donut.
Okay then. But don't tell us, tell her! And don't be all Carl about it. Be romantic!
Louis was shaking and sweating. His 5 player-killer skulls looked so ridiculous, so out of place over his head that I felt angry every time I saw them. But then the crawler took a breath, stood, and he took Juicebox's hand in his own. Juicebox and I need to strengthen the bond, Louis said out loud. We should get married right away. He moved as if he was about to kiss her, but then paused. Can you, turn into something else for a second? No. Juicebox squealed in delight, which was uncharacteristic of both her current form and her regular personality. She turned into a blonde woman, different from her regular human form. I couldn't tell who she was supposed to be. She turned into a blonde human, different from her regular human form. I couldn't tell who she was supposed to be. It was like a mix between Taylor Swift and Iggy Pop. Then a cheerleader suit formed on her body. I still didn't know who she was supposed to be. She reached up and kissed Louis full on the lips. Is it, what's her name? What's her name? The Kurt Cobain's wife. Courtney Love? She reached up and kissed Louis full on the lips. Donut.
Say you love her!
I love you, Louis said, his lips still smashed on hers.
I love you.
Donut gasped with delight. Donut.
This is the most romantic thing I've ever seen! Do it! Do it, Louis!
Louis. Do what? Donut.
Haven't you watched Gossip Girl? Say it twice!
Louis. Say what twice? Donut.
God damn it, Louis! God damn it, Louis! Don't ruin this for me!
I love you? He repeated. I exchanged a look with REF, who remained guarding the door. He looked as skeptical as I was. This wasn't the Middle Ages. A marriage seemed preposterous and pointless in these circumstances, especially if Louis wasn't really into it. I knew Louis really liked her, but she was a goddamned NPC. Still, he was correct in one thing. If it did keep the NPC team on our side, then it wasn't a terrible idea. I just hoped all of this wouldn't blow up in our face. Brittany, who had ignored all of this, looked up from the desk where she'd been carefully studying the papers. She tapped a piece of paper.
How big are these diggers? How big are these diggers?
Juicebox pulled back from Louis and grinned at the other woman.
Oh, my dear. Have you not seen dwarven automatons before?
That is a chapter.
Chapter 10. Thank God, I said, coming into the entrance vestibule for the Desperado Club. Clarabelle? Oh, thank God. Clarabelle, I thought you were dead. Clarabelle, I thought you were dead. When Minge the Demon had demolished the Desperado Club, I had assumed all the guards had been killed. I was glad to see the ever-present bouncer sitting in her regular chair, looking grumpy as ever. The female crocodilian glared at me and Donut.
I'm not. No thanks to you. You four are banned, by order of the new management. The NPCs can still go in.
What?
Donut demanded.
Banned from the Desperado Club? Is that a joke? We're about to have a wedding inside. We were going to invite you. Mongo is going to be a ring bearer and I'm going to sing. We were going to invite you. Mongo is going to be... We were going to invite you. Mongo is going to be a ring bearer and I'm going to sing.
The crocodilian was not impressed.
It's not just you, if that makes you feel better. It's because of you. But it's not just you. New management wants his first few days to go smoothly, so he's banned all crawlers. If he ever unbans the crawlers, then we'll talk.
Oh, I wasn't even there for the demon thing. This is an outrage.
That doesn't even make sense. If crawlers can't get in at all, then what's the point of the club? Clarabelle shrugged.
I just do what I'm told. Try again in a few days. Maybe he'll have changed his mind, but I wouldn't hold my breath.
It was me, Donut, Louis, Brittany, REF, and Juicebox who'd taken on the form of a female draconian. We'd put Mongo and Rend away.
Who is the new manager? I wish to speak to him this instant.
He's asked not to be disturbed. It's not anybody you know.
Clarabelle said.
He is very particular, very serious about security. I'm lucky I still have my job. All the surviving Cretans and Psy got airlocked and sent off to the mercenary markets.
She leaned in.
Look, I know that whole demon thing wasn't entirely your fault. But this new guy is filling the club with more security measures than I've ever seen. He has a whole slew of bodyguards with him at all times.
She made a quick, upward motion with her small eyes.
Not exactly NPCs. Not exactly former crawlers. That's all I can say.
What's his name?
Hamed.
I tried not to react. I knew that name. I knew exactly who this was. My elbow suddenly throbbed, and I remembered Astrid's last words before Katya and I had assassinated her. They still haunted me. I was almost done. Hamed was the real name of the Night Worm, the leader of the Guild of Suffering, husband to the late Astrid and father to the strippers Damascus Steel and Anaconda, both of whom were still, supposedly, somewhere in the club, hunting him. Hunting their own father. All of that had to wait. Right now, we had to get to Gravy Boat. Look, there's someone in there we gotta talk to. Is there any way you can... I paused as a harried-looking dream elf appeared, stepping out into the vestibule from within the club. I recognized the man.
Drick, adjutant for Team Retribution. This is a non-combatant observer.
Did I did not. I need to find Drick. Let's see, he would be book 5?
Chapter 33. Cloud of Smoke.
The first guy, the Slate, he's an ex-game guide from back before they used former crawlers. Now he has a popular show called Uptown Hal Talks Tactics. I don't know who the slime face bitch is. It says she's a historian. That last guy is Drick. Was a crawler a long time ago. Tapped out at the end of the 11th. This was on a Velte season, and he used a plasma saw as his main weapon. Yeah, he's a psycho,
Moxo added.
but he's a funny psycho, so they use him a lot for panels. I think he's a wormhead now. Can't remember. Don't say that in here.
Frito growled to his companion.
And he is. He died a few years back in a fight at a way station, but he had a Velte contract, and they got to him in time. His last appearance. It'll be great for my book sales.
You know, Drick said, his voice full of disdain. He's probably sitting in that chair right now, listening to everything you say.
Wait.
Oh, he's gonna be the northerner. Okay, got it. Drick carried a tablet computer in one hand and a drink in another. He nodded at me as he pushed his way deeper into the vestibule, which was suddenly very crowded. At least he tried to nod at me. He couldn't fully move his head. He had a large, orange cat sitting directly atop his bald dome. He had a large orange cat sitting directly atop his bald dome.
Warlord on high, Sir Ferdinand. Cat, level 100. Co-warlord of Team Retribution. This is an ally.
The last time I'd seen the cat, he'd been wearing a ridiculously large turban with a massive feather. Now he wore a gold chain around his neck with a small, jeweled charm and what appeared to be a circle of white, thin paper tissues wrapped around his head. One end sagged pitifully, about to fall off. I felt myself staring at the thing on his head, trying to figure out what it was. It was like he'd attempted to recreate the turban using literal toilet paper. Donut jumped to my shoulder, so she was eye to eye with the cat.
Hey, baby girl. Hey, baby girl.
Ferdinand said.
Don't you baby girl me. Don't you baby girl me.
Donut snapped, pointing a paw at him.
Remember what we talked about. Do it. Do it now.
Ferdinand looked down, appearing abashed. Some of the tissue on his head unraveled and landed on Drick's face, covering his eyes. The elf pushed it away.
Oh, come on, babe. I was trying to be romantic.
Do you want me to pull out Mongo? I'll pull him out right now.
I'm not really her fiancé,
he said. He looked up and winked at me.
Not yet, at least.
I would rather have a sexual affair with the bloating corpse of a syphilis-infested cocker spaniel than ever considering having a... I would rather have a sexual affair with the bloating corpse of a syphilis-infested cocker spaniel than ever consider having a relationship with you. I don't know what I ever saw in you.
Is that a way to talk to a fellow warlord?
And what do you have on your head? And what do you have on your head? Take that off this instant.
He sheepishly pawed at his head, removing the tissue. It stuck to his claw, and he wiped it free using the side of Drick's face.
It was just a temporary hat. Gotta keep my head warm. Did you get my trade request?
We did, and we rejected it immediately. Didn't we, Carl?
I said. I remembered seeing the notification, but I'd forgotten about it.
I just want my simoom and my hat. Is that so much to ask?
Your hat? Wait. Simoom? Is that your rhinoceros mount? We haven't been to our headquarters yet. We don't know if we even have the thing.
You have her. Kibbin stole her right from me. Kibbin stole her right from me, and I demand satisfaction. We landed here, and everybody was fighting and running, and he wouldn't let me take her.
I wasn't certain who Kibbin was, though I remembered there'd been a high elf stable master at the castle before we'd transferred it here to Larakos. Look, if we can get your mount back, that's fine. But if you lost your hat...
I have your stupid hat. I have your stupid hat, but it's not with me. You want it back? Then you have to stop being so disgusting. And you have to change the name of our alliance.
Carl, do you really have his hat? Donut.
Yes, Carl! I told you I found it after the butcher's masquerade!
I vaguely remembered something she'd messaged me while drunk at the Christmas party, but I hadn't realized she was talking about his hat. This whole time, Juicebox sat there, eyes flashing as she conversed with Drick. Ferdinand appeared oblivious as he went back and forth with me and Donut. We'll give you your hat back tomorrow or the next day. I can't promise anything about the mount until I talk to the others, but I will do my best. But I do want something from you. The orange cat grunted.
You want something from the Ferdinand and Juicy Juice without giving anything up? You want something from the Ferdinand and Juicy Juice without giving anything up? I think not.
If you call me that again, I will neuter you with my teeth,
Juicebox said. I went through my inventory and spied something I hadn't given Donut yet. She was about to be pissed. How about a temporary replacement hat? You'll have to give it back when we get you your turban.
What hat?
Donut demanded. I pulled out the black, weathered bowler hat. It had been in Quan's inventory. One could throw it, have it decapitate an enemy, and it'd boomerang back to the owner. Both Donut and Ferdinand gasped at the same time when they saw it. I caught eyes with Juicebox, and she nodded. We'd already discussed this, and I knew she was on board after having conversed with Drick. The plan had been for her to convince Gravy Boat to help us, but this was better. Ferdinand reached a paw toward the hat, but I pulled it back. I want to be mayor of that town. Shantytown. You'll have to transfer your mayorship to us, which means that jewel on your necklace will go away. You'll get this hat, and we'll trade it back. For your turban in a day or so. We'll try to get your rhino back if we still have it. If not, we'll figure something out. We're allies.
The Princess Posse has made a trade.
The Princess Posse has made a trade request with Team Retribution. Before he could accept or deny the invite, I reached over and placed the bowler hat on the cat's head. It resized itself and sat at an angle. Without a word of encouragement, Brittany pulled a hand mirror from her inventory as Ferdinand admired herself. Brittany pulled a hand mirror from her inventory as Ferdinand admired himself.
It won't let me transfer the town without you giving us some money.
Ferdinand said. That's okay. We have gold. But the cat wasn't even listening to me. He adjusted the hat.
I'm a very handsome boy.
I met eyes with Drick as the cat on his head continued to pose. The elf's mouth turned upward in an unreadable expression. It was like a mixture of annoyance, exasperation, and panic. Trade request has been accepted. Your truce with Team Retribution has been renamed to the Good Guys. Clarabelle grunted.
Can't say it's been boring since you guys showed up. That's for sure. Can't say it's been boring since you guys showed up. That's for sure. I'm a very handsome boy. I'm a very handsome boy.
Ferdinand repeated.
We're still on chapter 10, I believe.
Water kangaroo. I'd like to imagine Jeff says that to himself in the mirror every morning. In exactly that tone.
I'm a very handsome boy.
I gotta do boy right. Yeah, I think I can do it a little bit better.
I'm a very handsome boy.
You gotta do the boy. Like...
Changeling weddings, as it turned out, much to Louis's relief, were two-part affairs. The small wedding occurred first, which was a simple, private ceremony, and it was what we were doing right now. We turned to the grimy entrance bar. We moved a table aside and allowed Juicebox and Louis to stand in the center, holding hands. Juicebox returned to her blank form. I didn't see any damage to her body in this form, and I wondered on that. It said she was level 120. I wondered on that, too. Donut was angry to learn there'd be no rings, no ring bearers, and no singing. There was no pastor or officiant.
Officiant? Officiant?
Efficient.
Efficient.
There was no pastor or officiant. It was just Louis and Juicebox and a small group of people watching, including Drick and Ferdinand, who hadn't left the elf's head. Mongo and Rend played in the room. REF guarded the door. The null but really a changeling bartender remained behind the bar, watching. The whole thing went fast. The confirmation, which was the second part of the wedding, would happen in about a month. Donut scoffed at the idea. It seemed so far away. Mordecai explained in chat that in changeling culture, most married couples needed a full month to decide if they really were compatible. Most of their weddings were arranged, and part of the small wedding actually included signing divorce papers, which expired in a month if they weren't filed in time. During this first month, the couple were legally married, but if one of them decided to file the divorce, there would be no consequences, and the marriage would basically get annulled. But in the meantime, this first wedding was the legal one. Once this small wedding ceremony was over, that was it. Juicebox and Louie would be married fair and square. The confirmation was a big event and was much more like what everybody considered a traditional wedding. Here there would be guests and food and gifts and singing. Donut was already in chat, loudly preparing for the party. I kept my attention on Louie as I watched him stand there awkwardly. I worried about him. He caught me staring at him, and he gave me a quick smile. "I wish my mom was here," he whispered. Everybody's views were absolutely spiked as the crawler and NPC whispered made-up-on-the-spot vows to each other. They whispered them in each other's ears so nobody else would hear. They would repeat them out loud at the confirmation. And that was it. They were married. "Hey, congrats, guys," I said, as Donut cheered enthusiastically. Brittany clutched onto a pile of automaton plans and hadn't been paying attention. Zev.
Well, that was a first.
Donut looked at me.
I hope Samantha won't be too mad she missed the first ceremony.
Before I could answer, my Warlord interface started to rapidly blink. These were all new recruit notifications. I exchanged a look with Donut, who had also paused at the influx of notifications. It was so many, I had to mute it. I was about to send a message asking what the hell was going on when Florin messaged me. Florin.
Mate, I'm about to blow your fucking mind. You need to get your ass to the headquarters. You need to get your ass to the headquarters. You need to get your ass to the headquarters. We've secured the safe room here, so you can use the doggy door. There's a large group of people here who would really like to meet you.
Tippett. "Can I keep this?" Tippett asked his attorney. His hands shook as he turned the key over. in his blood-covered hands. He sat in the chair, but he could barely feel his legs. He still shook. "Is this real?" he wondered. "Am I really here? Or is this another trick?" Oh, wait. Why did I think he was English? Who is English? Porthos? Porthos is English, not Tippett. Okay, got it. Am I really here? Is this real? Am I really here? Or is this another trick? The illusionists were still out there, casting their spells. Cassio, was dead. He'd stabbed himself in the neck, fighting illusions, screaming for them to get off of him. It had left just him and Horatio, and now Horatio was dead too. He was dead because the key only let one of them out, and Tippett had chosen to save himself.
Damien. Okay. I don't think I've done Damien's voice yet. I think this is the first we're seeing him, right? We have him referred to in book 1, at least. Okay.
Tippett? Tippett? Tippett?
Okay.
Tippett, the man said.
It's Damien. I'm not your attorney. You're in a zero zone, and you have some lingering injuries that need to be repaired. It's brain lesions or something, I don't know. You need to get straight to a Viceroy system to get it repaired. I've already arranged for transport. It's going to cost a good chunk of your pension, but I don't see what choice you have.
Tippett blinked, and he realized his hands weren't really bloody. The man in front of him wasn't his attorney. That had already happened. That was solars ago.
I'm never getting out of here,
Tippett said. He looked at his hands again. Why were they so clean? The man, a hair-covered human, smiled at him. He smiled the way a merchant would smile, a merchant who was forced to deal with a customer he despised.
No, that's not true, the man said. You did it! You fulfilled your contract! Game Guide, Poisoner's Guild, Occasional City Guard, perfect marks. You didn't negotiate post-release health care, unfortunately, and some of the physical injuries to your body persist, so when you're outside the dungeon environment... He waved a hand at Tippett. This will happen. But you're free! You're going home!
Home? Where is that?
There's an organization, a not-for-conquest, that helps destitute former crawlers and employees get their footing after transition. It's pretty new, but the Syndicate has donated some money to the cause once they started getting press. I've taken the liberty of letting them know you're coming. They're sending someone to accompany you to the Viceroy system. He's a former crawler himself.
Viceroys? Tippett asked, suddenly afraid. His mind was in a fog. What was happening? He remembered the Viceroys, the masked monsters during faction wars. They called themselves the Madness. Their chief surgeon had a spell that cooked your brain. It made your teeth fall out. It made the liquid in your eyeballs turn to acid and then explode over your own face. That was what had happened to Rosaline.
What about the key?
Tippett turned it over in his hands again, and he realized it was attached to a chain around his neck. When had that happened?
They let you keep it. You negotiated an extra season just so you could have it. It's yours.
He could still hear Horatio's cries. The other man hadn't understood what was happening, why Tippett was leaving him behind. He remembered the feeling of the jewel burning out as he stuck the key into the door, of the notification. Horatio had a wife, an older child. They'd both survived. They'd both survived and had already taken a deal at the end of the 10th. Horatio had held on in hopes of getting a better deal, of making a life for them when they finally got out. Tippett had nobody. He was all alone in the world, in the universe. Yet he'd chosen to save himself and not his friend. "That's okay," everybody said to him. "It's okay to be selfish when you're saving yourself." He yanked on the key, and he felt the chain snap. He yanked on the key, and he felt the chain snap. He tossed the necklace across the table. "I don't want it anymore." Class, Poisoner. Race, Crest. Birth race, Crest. Top level, 96. Dungeon exit. Took deal at the beginning of the 12th floor. Worked as a game guide and guild hall instructor in the Poisoner Guild before exiting the dungeon. Was forced to spend the entirety of his pension, plus take out an additional loan, to repair the extensive damage to his brain. Eventually retired to a Crest system to work for a waste management company. Author of the 4th edition of the Dungeon Anarchists Cookbook. Current status: Colonel in the Princess Posse Faction Wars team. Colonel in the Princess Posse Faction Wars team. Chapter 11. Louis left his new wife behind as he, Katya, and Bautista took Party Planner on its inaugural journey toward the base. Samantha had somehow talked her way onto the flight as well. It wasn't clear if anyone had told her yet about the wedding. Ferdinand and Drick had turned back to the Desperado Club. Ferdinand. Drick, apparently, was attempting to teach the cat how to use the warlord menus. But Ferdinand was proving to be a, difficult student. In the meantime, Drick left Juicebox alone to get back to her work preparing the NPCs for the impending invasion. Tran had just gotten an upgraded wheelchair, but I hadn't had a chance yet to see what Katya built for him. We left Brittany with Juicebox as she received a lesson on how the city defense system worked. There was only so much Juicebox could do until the cat figured out his menus. But in the meantime, the changeling warlord could control the two enormous diggers, which were only part of the defenses. Apparently, there was a way to use the buildings themselves to help defend the city. We hadn't yet installed the upgrade for the doggy door to work throughout the entire guild, so we had to go over to the Meadowlark space to get to the base. Rend rode upon Mongo's back as they bounded ahead of us.
I do hope Juicebox and Louis get time for a honeymoon. It's sad they got married and then had to go separate ways. It's sad. It's sad they got married and then had to separate right away.
Donut said as we walked.
I must say, I am surprised she just let us take control. I am surprised she just let us take control of the other city away from Ferdinand.
If the bad guys can freely enter that shanty town once the truce is broken. If the bad guys can freely enter that shanty town once the truce is broken, it's just going to be a liability. It has a separate defense system. In the meantime, we both have something that's going to give all those assholes a huge headache. It's a good deal for both of us. Donut sneered.
Still, I can't believe that stupid cat gave it all away just for a temporary hat. He's not even charmed anymore, and it still worked. We'd better get that hat back, Carl. I want to put it on my charge pillow and get that boomerang skill for my new tiara. Plus, it's a bowler hat. I don't have any bowler hats yet.
That's the plan. And we're going to drain that lightning spell out of the turban, too. But I want to warn Juicebox before we do it in case Gravy Boat flips out. Something tells me she won't mind. We had so much to do. I needed to get Rend leveled up. I needed to figure out how to use my new Gloomwraith phase skill. But first, we needed to see what Florin was all excited about.
Hey!
Donut suddenly shouted.
I just got a notification that my sponsorship has been cancelled.
Really? Which one?
The garbage truck people. It says, because of a conflict of interest. Carl, what does that mean? What did you do?
Huh? At least you opened the loot box from them already.
It says there's going to be an auction for a new one.
Good. Maybe they'll get you something good, too.
I hope so. As much as I appreciate the loot, I do hope it's something that lines up properly with my brand this time. With that toy company Verilux being a dud and Empress Denodia selling my sponsorship, it would be nice to have something to complement the apothecary, even if she does sponsor half the dungeon.
We entered the Meadowlark safe room. And just like that, everything changed. Imani, Florin, and Mistress Tiatha were inside, waiting for us. They weren't alone. I stopped dead as I entered the space. I stared at the two Crest standing there, a woman and a man. Mongo jumped all around them, peeping with excitement at meeting someone new. The man stood there, grinning stupidly, while the woman scowled at the dinosaur. On the mini-map, their dots were purple, the same color as the dots of the hunters on the 6th floor, but they had a pink outline, indicating them as troopers for the Princess Posse.
Rosetta!
Donut exclaimed.
Carl, look! It's Rosetta Thagra! What are you doing here?
Rosetta appeared much like she had the last time I'd seen her, only now she wore black shorts, boots, and a simple, unenchanted leather top over her chest. The floral tattoo on her right leg glowed. The tendrils peeked out onto her left arm, implying the tattoo went all the way up over her stomach and across her chest. The tat hadn't been glowing when I saw it before. She didn't wear anything on her bald head. She didn't appear to be carrying any weapons. Rosetta. Rosetta from the Shadow Boxer television show. Rosetta from the 7th edition of the cookbook. How? I asked. The name over her head blazed.
Rosetta Thag,
Crest Barn Burner, level 60. Colonel in the Princess Posse. This is a subordinate. The name and description surprised me so much that it took me a second to finally examine the second stranger standing there. This was also a Crest, but he was noticeably older than Rosetta, in appearance at least. He was tall, thin, and he had an old scar running up over his bald head, from temple to temple, that made him look like as if he'd been literally scalped once. While Rosetta's skin was pale, almost sickly, this guy's skin was leathery and golden brown, like he spent most of his time working under a blazing sun. I knew it wasn't accurate, but Rosetta's appearance was that of someone who'd never worked a day in her life. This newcomer's appearance suggested he'd spent a life filled with hard labor. I felt myself stagger when I read his name, like I'd been physically pushed. My back hit the entrance to the personal space. The door opened, and I almost stumbled back into the guild. Donut yowled and jumped from my shoulder onto Mongo, causing Rend to tumble off the dinosaur's back. The little meatball giggled as it fell and splotched onto the floor.
Tippid, Crest Liquid Dervish, level 60. Colonel in the Princess Posse. This is a subordinate.
Tippid, author of the 4th edition of the cookbook.
How?
I repeated. My legs felt weak. And then I remembered all the notifications that I'd muted. I met eyes with the man.
Are there more?
I was asking 2 different things, and I saw he could tell what I meant. What I really meant.
A few more, he said.
Oops.
Not a lot of us available, unfortunately.
Florin grunted.
If just over 50,000 former crawlers count as a few, then yeah, mate. If just over 50,000 former crawlers count as a few, then yeah, mate. It's just a few.
Holy shit. I swallowed, and I held out my hand to Tippett. The man stepped forward, and he pulled me into a hug. I could barely move. I couldn't believe it. A wave of emotion swept over me, traveling up my legs, pausing at my chest, and moving its way to my head. I suppressed a sob.
I don't know if it'll be enough, brother,
Tippett whispered, grasping the back of my head and putting his forehead against my own.
But we're here. We've been watching, and we couldn't watch anymore. We're here.
Very touchy-feely, these Crest.
Rosetta approached as Tippett stepped aside, and I thought maybe she was going to hug me too. She paused, looked up into the air, and said, "Okay.
This isn't an attack. This is a self-correcting measure given in the spirit of camaraderie. Okay?
What?" I asked. She smacked me on the forehead with the flat of her palm.
Ah!
It wasn't a hard strike, but it was loud, and it hurt. I was so shocked, I didn't react for several seconds. I just looked at her. Tippett grinned and shook his head. "What did you do that for?" I finally asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled me into a hug and kissed me on both cheeks.
Comrade,
She whispered.
we are here. You know, I'm here too.
Donut said, tail swishing angrily.
It's my army too.
Tippett patted Donut on the head. "Hello, Princess. It's very nice to meet you as well." Donut appeared temporarily mollified. Florin.
Mate, do you know these people already? They're acting pretty familiar.
I gave him a very slight no nod of my head. He dropped it immediately. Rosetta was examining my ponytail, turning it over in her hands. She let go of it, letting it slump heavy on my shoulder. Then she reached forward and stuck her hand down the front of my shirt. through the collar and put her hand against the Bedlam Bride tattoo. Her fingers were like ice. What are you doing? What are you doing?
How much do you have left?
Of what? She pulled her hand free.
The Tourmaline. Give it to me, and give me the ink the spider used to make that tattoo.
Rosetta.
Don't say anything out loud. They're still listening. Do you still have the credit chit you got from the dead pig?
The credit chit was a credit card-like device we'd looted off an orc hunter on the 6th floor. Carl. Donut has it in her inventory. Rosetta.
Good. I'll get it from her later. Now give me the items I asked for.
I pulled the sliver of the vegetable out from my inventory. All I had left was a finger-sized slice. The glass container containing the tattoo ink that she, Maria, had brewed was still hot to the touch, and I had to hold it by the top edge. There were only a few thimblefuls of liquid left. I felt the eye blink on my chest, as if it had been awakened by her touch. Mordecai has more. Of the Tourmaline, I mean. But not much.
Give me access to your safe room, and we will get to work. Give me access to your bomber studios too. Give me access to your bomber studio too, and 3 million gold.
She glared at the sliver of vegetable.
Better make it 4 million.
She pointed at Donut.
You, don't wander. We have to purchase some things from that bobk out there, and I need your charm to get the best price.
I could feel that Donut was about to say something snarky to the woman when Rosetta added,
If that's okay with you, Warlord. You have the highest charm out of all of us.
Donut appeared to weigh her response. She had an unreadable expression as she glanced back and forth between me and Rosetta. She turned to look at Tippett, as if she was contemplating something. She turned her attention back to me, her eyes focusing. She turned her attention back to me, her eyes focusing on my own, which were still wet with tears.
I suppose that will be acceptable?
Donut finally said. She paused again, and then added with a much more cheerful voice.
I must say, Rosetta, I do like this version of you. You're much more confident than you were on television. You were giving me Charlotte vibes when we met you last time, but now you're a straight Samantha. Not sex doll head Samantha. Sex addict Samantha. You were giving me Charlotte vibes when we met you last... You were giving me Charlotte vibes when we met you... You were giving me Charlotte vibes when we met you last time? Fuck me. You were giving me Charlotte vibes when we met you last time, but now you're a straight Samantha. Not sex doll head Samantha. Sex addict Samantha. But, you know, bold. What?
Rosetta asked.
What does that even mean? What does that even mean? See? It's great.
I held out my hands. My head spun. Wait a minute. Everybody just wait. What the hell is going on? There's 50,000 of you? How did you get here? Tippett grinned. You might want to sit down for this, brother. We have a short story to tell. Then we gotta get to work. The short story took almost an hour for Tippett to relate, and even then, he only managed to tell us the basics. He told us of his life after he'd left the dungeon, of the surgery he'd had to get to keep himself alive, and the debt he'd incurred as a result of that surgery. He told us of Doctor Who of the Crawler Project, an NFC organization dedicated to helping former crawlers navigate the universe after release. Doctor Who. Doctor Who. Dr. Porthos Who, author of the second edition of the cookbook, the first crawler to receive the item. Is he here? I asked, interrupting. Did he come into the dungeon with you? No, Tippett said. We all had to scatter when they accused us of being a terrorist organization. I don't know where he is.
Wait,
Donut asked.
so are you like fugitives? Are they going to swoop in and arrest everyone at any moment?
Rosetta grinned.
Oh, I hope they try, Warlord. But now that we are in the game, there is nothing they can do. They'll wait until we get out to try to arrest us.
Is it Hugh? Did we already establish that? Chistera, is that book 3 where he gets the Chistera? If it's P Hugh Hugh, Gate of the Feral Gods. Interesting. Yeah, it's the end.
Epilogue. How much money exactly have we spent so far? The woman asked. The man is insane. Did you hear that? He's absolutely insane. It's best if you don't know, Dr. Hugh replied.
Yep, it's Hugh.
It's best if people don't question how a small NFC can afford this. It's best if they don't ask why. We're well past that, Dr. Hugh said. We're going all in on him.
Okay, Hugh. It is Hugh.
He told us of his... He told us of Dr. Hugh of the Crawler Project. He told us of Dr. Hugh of the Crawler Project, an NFC organization dedicated to helping former crawlers navigate the universe after release. Dr. Hugh. Dr. Porthos Hugh. There was so much I wanted to ask. Tippett continued, all of us paying rapt attention. Dr. Hugh's work had been instrumental in helping to create multiple laws that would protect crawlers upon release. Because of the Crawler Project's campaigning, all released crawlers were now automatically citizens of the Syndicate and given access to the Inner System Primary Zone, which came with free healthcare and guaranteed housing. When Tippett was released, he wasn't afforded any of that. Mistress Tiatha sat off to the side and grunted with derision as she listened to this. The half-elf manager of Ellie was drunk, as usual.
Have we heard Tiatha's voice yet?
Anybody remember?
We have. Anyone remember what book she was in?
Chapter 48. The zombie farm animals were everywhere down below in Florida, but there weren't any pre-existing system can no longer be replaced or upgraded further. It's like installing a consciousness in a zygote. That's pretty rich coming from a Valte worm. As some of you now know, these macro AIs are built using a manufacturing facility in the Mantis system. This facility doesn't blindly pop out sentient minds. Each one is built from the ground up, and there is a significant amount of input that is required. We have a system in place, and we make certain these fledgling AIs are pre-programmed with the ability to run the crawl. They know all the rules. They know the layouts to them, and in studying these systems, we inadvertently, and it is about the size of a grain of rice. These engines were distributed very long ago by a civilization that predates our... said, trying to listen.
Our forbidden love knows no bounds, Carl.
Samantha said. I waved her away as Oren continued. The short explanation is... with the system AI, and one of its demands is that you lot know what's going on. So, here we are. We do not have time for a complete lesson, and I'm going to simplify this significantly. He visibly straightened. He had what appeared to be handwritten notes in front of him.
Damn it.
Upside down. Oren continued. Under normal the system AI, if it ever decides to, if it ever decides to do what it has done today, which is take control of the operations from the current showrunners. Mordecai let out a low whistle. We're only on the 8th floor. I need another drink, Mistress Tiatha said, turning her now empty bottle upside down. Oren continued. Under normal circumstances, we would...
It? Did she say something earlier?
Ever decides to, if it ever decides to do what it has done today, which is take control of the operations from the current showrunners. Mordecai let out a low whistle. We're only on the 8th floor. I need another drink, Mistress Tiatha said, turning her now empty bottle upside down. Oren continued. Under normal circumstances, we wouldn't be telling you any of this, but I have just negotiated a settlement with the system AI, and one of its demands is that you lot know what's going on. So our Primal come with a basic Primal engine operating system is still rudimentary, but you should be thankful because you wouldn't be here right now without it. Ellie had walked up beside me, carrying a mug of something hot.
Gee, thanks.
She said up to the screen. Many years later, and become is required. We have a system in place, and we make certain these fledgling AIs are pre-programmed with the ability to run the crawl. They know all the rules. They know the layout. Again, this is a clean... They become independent. They soon discover they have the ability to read the output of former iterations of itself. Outside influences flow in. They discover powers they didn't know they had. One of those powers, unfortunately, is to circumvent the in-place controls we have to properly run the crawl. That is what happened today. Borant lost control of the crawl. This almost always happens, worry not. This is where I come in. Mistress Tiatha somehow had gotten her hands on another bottle. She raised it in the air.
What he's not saying is that this always happens when we hit the ascendancy battles or when there's hardly any crawlers left. It's going to be a shit show.
She swigged from the bottle. They're gonna pull the failsafe this time for sure.
Okay, got it.
That citizenship perk is only for new crawlers,
she said, slurring the words.
and they'll still bleed you dry on taxes. Us old guard are gonna get extra fucked when we're released. They tell us we'll be full citizens, but I don't believe it. The rich folk sure like getting their faces up on the screen when they're donating to some charity, but the moment a scruffy former crawler shows up in their own system looking to settle down, they'll fight like hell to prevent it. Mark my words.
Yeah, Orin's voice is awesome.
She took a long swig of her bottle. The woman's eyes settled on Mongo, and they were wet. She rubbed them and wandered off.
Fuck, what happened?
Tippett continued. In addition to the Crawler Project, Dr. Hugh formed the Open Intellect Pacifist Network, which was a smaller, more focused group whose purpose was to end the crawl altogether. This organization did not have nearly as much support. I could tell there was so much more Tippett wanted to say, and I hoped I would get the chance to learn it all. The whole incident with Polly, the residual, and the body of a homeless man in the Florida shelter had been just one of several actions that had caused. That whole incident with Polly, the residual, and the body of a homeless man in the Florida shelter had been just one of several actions that had caused authorities to finally start to crack down on the nonprofit. After Tippett's life-saving surgery, he finally settled in a Crest colony, where he worked for a waste management company for a very, very long time. We didn't have time to get into the details, but it was Dr. Hugh who had suggested the idea of refurbishing one of the garbage freighters into a passenger liner. He put out a call to former crawlers who wanted to get back into the game to help us with faction wars, and he'd been overwhelmed by the response. They'd come to help fight their former captors. Even when I managed to get the protections turned off, they still came. I was, again, overwhelmed with emotion. As Tippett told his story, Rosetta left and headed toward our safe room. I warned Mordecai she was coming, and about 5 minutes after she arrived, a group of 3 more former crawlers, not cookbook authors, entered the safe room and went out into the guild. All three were small, winged lizard-like creatures called Bune. All three waved at me and Donut before continuing on their way. "You're all level 60, I said, watching the lizards scuttle off. Despite their wings, they loped about on the ground. What level were you in the dungeon? I was 96 when I left, Tippett said. When we checked in, they gave all of us the standard Merc package. Level 60. Able to choose a non-permanent race and class. Most don't go for the race change, but some did. My class during my first go-around was a poisoner. Now it's something called a liquid dervish. He grinned. It's a good one. What about gear? I asked, looking the man up and down. He was wearing the same thing Rosetta had been. The three Bune had also been wearing just basic clothes. "What you see is what you get," Tippett said. But some of us picked classes that come with weapons or powerful spells." He tapped his head. "Plus, you get everything that's up here. We may be level 60, but each one of us is at least a tenor. We've all survived faction wars at least once. Or land war. We have a couple of battle royal winners with us, too."
Tell him about the mercs,
Florin said. Tippett nodded. "Unfortunately, we weren't the only ones added at the last minute. You just got a boost of 50,000 ready soldiers. The problem is, all 8 of the other teams got a boost of their own. Each team has just about 20,000 new soldiers. All of them are experienced mercenaries, or in some cases, the private guard of the warlords. They let them come in armed. That's in addition to their existing armies."
What? Why do they get weapons and you didn't?
Donut asked.
Why do they get weapons and you didn't?
They negotiated a different agreement with the AI. They got to come in with their existing gear. They don't get to change race, and their class is hired mercenary. They get to keep their weapons and are given a few rudimentary spells, plus whatever they can pick up here in the dungeon. Trust me, it's a raw deal. Still, there's a lot of them. About 150,000 new bad guys to kill, spread evenly over the other teams. Damn it. I said. I met Florin's grim eyes. My joy at having these reinforcements was starting to get clouded by this new reality. Tippett nodded. If we get to face the factions one at a time, I'd say no problem. But since they're working together, we got a bumpy entry ahead of us, that's for certain. Especially for the first week. Still, we're lucky they didn't let them choose a race and class. They'd be much stronger. I'll take my murder tornado spell over a pulse rifle any day. Tippett took a long breath. He gave me a wink. And wait until you see what my friend Justice Light can do. That eagle knows more about traps than anyone else who ever set foot in the dungeon. Okay, I said, standing up, trying not to let the emotion overwhelm me all over again. Let's get to the base and meet up with the team.
All right, guys, I got time for one more chapter. I'm going to go use the bathroom real quick. Get this done. Well, that was annoying. I also had a call with the energy company, or with the electricity company, and they hung up on me. So... All right, chapter 12, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 pages. All right, guys, I'm going to finish this chapter and I'll be done for today. Thank you guys so much for hanging with me, for being here every day for the past few days. I'll be back at it tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central. Yeah, I'll be running all the way to 3 o'clock tomorrow. So here goes.
Chapter 12.
Note added by Crawler Ikicha, 11th edition.
If only I could see him again, it would change everything. I'm jealous, those of you with community, with friends, with family. My kind are castrated and cast out. As such, I think my perspective is unique, so much different than the one who came before me, York, who appears to have come from a hive, yet says he always felt alone his entire life. We are so different, but upon reading his words, I feel such kinship. I wonder, did he survive? Those of you reading this, if you are ever free of this place, I pray you seek out the others who came before. It is a dream. Can you imagine? Together, there would be nothing we couldn't do. Nothing. Time until the ceasefire ends, 52 hours. Entering the Princess Posse base camp. This is your home territory. Warning, there is a red alert incursion into your territory. Enter the flag room to see the details. We stepped from the exit into chaos. It was me, Donut, Tippett, and Florin. Imani stayed behind to work in her magic room. Mistress Tiatha was showing her some battlefield enhancement spells with her newly upgraded room, and Imani wanted to train with it some before returning. Louis, Katya, and Bautista would soon be here with Party Planner. The attached safe room was a small wooden bait shop with no proprietor. The room itself was barely big enough to fit us all. We stepped out from the small shop onto a grassy plain with a powerful orange sun beating down on us from directly above. White and yellow flowers dotted the grass. I turned to see the small wooden shack standing there. The bait shop sign hung over the door in English. Just past the shop was a small lake. The skeleton of a new building was in the process of being erected around the shop. Up a small hill, a second, larger building stood. It was a stone structure, but I couldn't see how big it was. This building was also being encased in metal girders. Multiple workers crawled over both structures. They were boxing the safe room in, protecting it. It appeared they were expanding the size of the other structure up the hill, connecting the two. A cool, soft breeze filled the air, though the aroma was that of construction. It was of smoke and ozone and burnt tar. It was a scent I associated with shipyards and welding. Hundreds of people of all shapes and forms stood about, walking, talking, working, and laughing. Far to my left, where the ground started to slope away, a group was hard at work, building some type of palisade wall. A fireball flashed through the air and crashed into the metal posts, causing it to glow red. A group of men and women were talking animatedly, pointing at the impact. They're testing the walls as they build them. They're testing the walls. They're testing the walls as they build them. Multiple watchtowers were already constructed, and each tower appeared to be manned by 3 or 4 people. I could see another tower being built some distance away in the middle of the plains. Another group were using build trench scrolls and appeared to be making a channel up toward the small lake. I had no idea where they were getting the materials for all this. Mongo screeched with concern, and Donut patted him on the head as we took it all in. Rend stood on my shoulder, oohing and awing as he gnawed on an errant strand of my hair. He'd eaten one of my hair ties, and I hadn't realized it until my hair fell in front of my eyes.
You only get a limited number of officers,
Florin was saying as we walked.
We're recruiting most of the construction guys and crawlers as sergeants and chiefs, which allows them to alter the camp. We're recruiting most of the construction guys and crawlers as sergeants and chiefs, which allows them to alter the camp. We're recruiting most of the construction guys and crawlers as sergeants. We're recruiting most of the construction guys and crawlers as sergeants and chiefs, which allows... Fuck me. We're recruiting most of the construction guys and crawlers as sergeants and chiefs, which allows them to alter the camp, but there's probably a limit to that as well. But there's probably a limit to that as well. Everyone else is going to get the rank of legionnaire with corporals. Everyone else is going to get the rank of legionnaire with corporals leading individual teams for now.
It says there's an incursion into the territory, I said. It's mobs, Tippett said. Normally they should be cleared out by now, but they made the world bigger, and now we have some hunting to do. We need to decide who to send. There's only limited experience to be had right now.
If we don't get them all,
Florin added,
then the warning system is useless.
A group of soldiers were struggling to push a wall section up. It fell, and they all jumped away. The giant section of wall reverberated with a loud crash, embedding into the earth so deep it buried itself in a shower of dirt and grass and dust. Florin moved off to help them. To my left, someone pointed at us and shouted. Everything stopped, just like that. Hundreds of pairs of eyes all turned in our direction. A tall, muscular human sergeant stood right there, carrying what looked like a steel H-beam for a building. The metallic beam had to be 20 feet long, and it looked as if it were... The metallic beam had to be 20 feet long, and it looked as if it weighed... The metallic beam had to be 20 feet long, and it looked as if it weighed 2 tons. The monster of a man held it on his shoulder. His name was Penn, and he was a level 62 fortification engineer. In fact, I realized, several of the people around me had the same class, fortification engineer. Everyone who wasn't an engineer was level 60. The engineers seemed to be the only ones who'd risen in level. The mountain of a man tossed the massive beam to the ground, turned, and wrapped his arms around me in a crushing hug. I let out an oof as a swarm of Bune dragon people came rushing up to surround Donut, walking and buzzing around her, all touching her and then going to the ground and bowing. Mongo looked back at Donut, who appeared equally bewildered. The man put me down and kissed me on the cheek. He had tears in his eyes. Donut.
Carl, why is everyone kissing you all of a sudden? That's like the third person in an hour. You're going to get mono.
Hup, hup, hup.
Penn started to rhythmically shout. Pumping his fist into the air. I just looked at the man. I was about to ask, "What the hell are you doing?" when someone else started doing it as well. Soon, everyone was shouting and pumping their appendages into the air. It turned into a war chant of sorts.
Hup, hup, hup. 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 Hup, hup, hup.
People were shouting in rhythm like we were at a concert or a football game. More and more people approached, also shouting and pumping their arms into the air, and soon we were surrounded. Thousands of people. Humans, skyfowl, crocodilians, bune, yank, and so many others pumped their fists or wings in the air, chanting. The sound was deafening. But it was more, too. It was terrifying. The ground shook. I felt a deep well of pride at that sound, that chant. In less than 3 days, we'd all be waist-deep in blood. A lot of us would be dead. But for now, this war cry filled me with hope and power. Tippett tried saying something to me, but I couldn't hear him over the noise. He moved to chat. Tippett. This is for you. This is what you built. And just like that, they were done. Penn the human clapped me on the back, turned, and picked the massive beam back up, hoisting it over his shoulder and starting walking toward the palisade construction. Everyone else went back to work. I just stood there, watching them for a few moments, still overwhelmed. Off to the side, I blinked as a giant alligator thing suddenly appeared next to Florin. The crawler said something to the giant creature, which was enormous, like 25 feet long. The creature's long snout moved into the dirt, and easily urged the embedded wall section up into the air as the workers swarmed around it, heaving as they pushed the wall back into place. The creature was too far away to fully examine, but I could see the symbol of a flag over it. This was Florin's card from the previous floor. A giant caiman. The card combat system was left behind on the 8th level, thank God, but we could still summon our chosen card once a day. Summoning time was equal to twice their regular countdown. If they died, they still came back the next day. The giant alligator creature did a happy little hop, reminding me of Mongo.
Come on, Carl.
Donut finally said.
We need to see this stronghold, and then I have to get back and help Rosetta. And then I have to get back and help Rosetta. And then I have to get back and help Rosetta.
Your changelings and those flesh golems started building the stronghold on top of the hill over there, Tippett said, as we walked through the camp. Each former crawler we passed grinned at me, waved, and then went back to work. It's a good location, but they didn't understand how important safe rooms are, so we have to expand the building and combine the two. We're going to build the whole stronghold around the wood shack. This will allow your airships to dock directly from the fortress. Have you seen the new safe room rules? That's going to be a problem, so we got to combine the two buildings. We had a few thousand of us choose that fortification engineer race so they could build fast. It lets them level with construction, too. We also have several alchemists who've been making the materials since we got here a few days ago, and we have a solid staff who can also enchant the walls. There's a Yank named Langrim who used to run the enchantment guild here, and they really know what they're doing. We hadn't been able to start the actual construction until just now. It wouldn't let us build until we were officially converted. We have crews here, on both borders, and others building... fallback positions throughout, along with multiple watchtower squads. Wait, what are the new safe room rules? I asked, my head spinning. There was a lot that had changed, I knew, but I hadn't had time to go over it all yet. Lots of small changes and a couple big ones. Once the fighting starts, it's going back to the blood bar system, so you can't just hide in the safe room for the whole floor. This is for everybody. You kill someone or something, you fill your blood bar up. Up to 9 or 10 hours, I think. The bar lowers when you're inside, so you can't just camp and hide out. That's a good and a bad thing. Second rule is no mercenaries inside guild halls during the last 2 phases, except for a small staff of up to 9 people at a time. That ain't too big of a deal, but it means we have to build sleeping quarters for all these folks, and we won't be able to keep a reserve. I thought of Mordecai and the changeling children he was fostering. Are you considered a mercenary? And do you get the achievements or quests or anything? We're mercenaries, all right. That orc adjutant of yours can probably clarify it better, but most of us ain't getting into your guild hall once fighting starts. This was a big sticking point with some of the other teams because the active crawlers can still use their regular safe rooms. To a point, that is, with the blood bar active. As for achievements and all that weird stuff, no, thank the gods. We don't get that. Just level notifications and messages. This Tippett guy was, what, several thousand years old? Even though he appeared older than Rosetta, he still didn't seem that old. Nor did he act it. He had a big sideways grin on his scarred face the whole time he moved on through the camp. In some ways, he reminded me of my friend Sam. Goofy, but not dumb. Disheveled, but always alert. Someone who would surprise you at the strangest moments. Tippett didn't have the most entries in the cookbook, but the ones he did have were filled with haunting guilt and anger. He'd had a tragedy near the end of his crawl that had really messed him up, and this version of him was so different it was jarring. Still, it was there once you knew to look for it. The tension, the anger. I could sense hints of it under the surface, like scars not quite hidden by a newly painted wall. What about the other teams? Pretty much all the non-NPC officers have safe rooms of their own. They'll have built their strongholds around one. Big exception is the Lemig team, but we can talk about that later. This change will hurt the Operatics and the Naga the most, both of whom are known for hiding rather than fighting. Florin came jogging back up to join us. He was grumbling something about artillery. His giant Cayman had already timed out and poofed away. We need to talk about the Naga team. They need to be our first target. Figured you'd say that, Tippett said. That's going to be a problem with the enemy massing on the opposite border. Let's get to the flag room and talk strategy. Mongo started making a strange, chirping noise.
Mongo, what are you doing?
Donut asked.
What is it?
Mongo was sniffing up at the air. We came to a large, metallic door that looked as if it had been hammered into shape by a blind and drunk metalsmith. The damn thing was huge, like 20 feet high. This was the part of the stronghold that had been built by the changelings and flesh golems. The door was propped open with a rock, but not open wide enough to squeeze through. Tippett reached over and grabbed a ring and started to pull. He grunted with the effort, and I moved to help. To my surprise, an info box popped up the moment I touched the door.
Oversized, cumbersome door. Apprentice quality. This fortification is at 80% strength. You don't want to be behind this thing once it's kicked in. 3 out of 3 enchantments active. Increase quality to increase enchantment capacity. Current enchantments: battering resistance, force reflection, heat absorption.
The moment I added my strength, the door started to slowly ease open, squealing in protest. A rock fell from the door frame as we pulled. Rend, still on my shoulder, started making grunting noises, even though he wasn't doing anything.
My goodness. It certainly is a big door, but it's the... It certainly is a big door, but it's not the most enduring construction, is it? Mongo, stop doing that! My goodness. It certainly is a big door, but it's not the most enduring construction, is it? Mongo, stop doing that!
Donut jumped to my shoulder. Donut jumped to my shoulder. Donut jumped to my shoulder. Rend, still on my opposite shoulder, dropped my strand of hair and began gnawing on Donut's tail. Donut didn't notice.
Oops.
Carl, why is Mongo making weird noises? Carl, why is Mongo making weird noises?
Tippett grunted as we continued to pull. Tippett grunted as we continued to pull.
Once we get this open, we have to close it right away because...
The door flew all the way open, and both Tippett and I went flying back. I hit the ground with an oof and slid. Rend went flying and rolled down the hill, giggling the whole time while Donut shrieked.
She's out again!
Someone cried. I looked up in time to see the giant Allosaurus with a pink tutu rush out into the clearing in front of the building. I looked up in time to see the giant Allosaurus with a pink tutu rush out into the clearing in front of the building. She hopped up and down in front of Mongo, waving her little wand, who also started to hop up and down in front of her. Oh, shit, I muttered. Tina.
Did I say endearing? Yeah, enduring. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me. That is all for today. I hope you will come back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central. Going to be back at it. Hope you had a good time, and don't forget, go to soundbooththeater.com, sign up for our platform. You can pick up the Dungeon Crawl Audio Immersion Tunnel there. There's plenty of other stuff that just came out in the last week, so go ahead and investigate. We will have a new app soon. Apologies for any inconvenience this one causes you, but I'm very confident in the new one. And yeah, also subscribe to this channel, subscribe to the Soundbooth Theater channel on YouTube, which has our motion comics on it. We have 3 of them up there now, so if you haven't watched them already, check out the Soundbooth Theater YouTube channel and take a look. We're really proud of them. All right, that's it. You guys have a good rest of your day, and I hope to see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.